Well, hello, everyone. I wanted to thank you all I see some familiar faces on our screens. I wanted to thank everyone for joining us this morning for the Community Impact Grants Child and Youth Development and Educational Virtual Session. My name is Nicole Rose, and I probably know many of you through the GivingMatters.com initiative here at CFMT. I've been here for 7 years, and prior to that, I worked at a mid-sized nonprofit here in Nashville serving children with autism and their families. I think that's how Adnan and I all kind of have in common, that we have a ton of direct service experience, and I hope that you see that in what we present to you today. Today's session will be hosted by Hal Cato, our CEO, and our Vice President of Community Impact, Adnan Karim. They will introduce themselves shortly, and I will be here to let people in from the waiting room, answer any questions in the chat, and moderate our Q&A session. The presentation will cover our strategic framework and our new community impact grant making, and we'll also review the most common questions submitted through your event registration. After that, we'll open up the floor for more Q&A if you have any other questions, and you're welcome to submit those questions through the Q&A feature in your Zoom. Thank you again for being here, and I'm going to leave it over to Hal and Adnan.
Thank you, Nicole. Hey, good morning, everybody. And yeah, it's fun. I'm scrolling through, seeing lots of friends and familiar faces as well. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for being curious enough to block out some time to want to learn what all is going on over here at the Community Foundation. Some of you this is our third or fourth session. Some of you may have participated, I think it was last Friday, it's just a blur, on our first general introductory session. And if you did, I want to apologize because some of this first part may be a little repetitive, but it doesn't hurt to hear it a second time. I have been in this role now for a year and a half, although I'm definitely not new to the nonprofit sector in Nashville since I started my first one before probably many of you were even born, in 1991 when I created Hands on Nashville in my little apartment. But some of my most memorable years doing this work were the 11 years I spent at Oasis Center, working in the positive youth development space, with schools and courts and foster care and all the things. So this is a group, and this is a part of our work that's near and dear to me personally on a number of levels. So I'll let Adnan introduce himself in just a moment, tell you a little bit more about his background. But I'm going to share my screen and let's just jump in, because I think it's important to give some context into how we got to this place. I realize that for many of you, and including me, for decades, the Community Foundation was a bit of a mystery. I couldn't really quite tell what was going on there. I knew they had a lot of money and I knew they made some grants, but I just didn't understand it a lot. And so that was sort of, I call it opening the kimono so that everybody really understands how we work and what our goals and priorities are, is number one on my list of things to do, and I hope we'll accomplish this morning. But let me tell you a little bit about, in the year and a half that I've been here, what I've been working on. Community Foundation has not had a formal strategic plan in a long time, and it was the number one thing that the board wanted me to do when they hired me. But I didn't want to do a traditional plan per se. I wanted to really redefine the framework for what is a community foundation supposed to be in the 21st century. And how can, we call ourselves a community foundation, but how do we ensure we're foundational to the community? Something I think about every single day when I pull up in our parking lot. And it starts, with defining our North Star, revisiting our mission statement, our why, and a vision for where we're going. But in addition to that, if you got a North Star, what's your East Star? And for us, the East Star is really articulating our external priorities. We have been funding arts to zoology in many, many counties for a long time. And Lots and lots of small grants I know have been appreciated, but it doesn't really add up to a lot of impact, the way that modern day philanthropy really looks at it. So we've been talking about that a lot, and that's what Adnan will get to in just a moment. But all of you guys have done strategic planning, and and you understand setting goals, objectives, strategies, and tactics, and what's the difference in all of those. And next month, we'll be releasing ours, and you'll be able to go through and read it and really get a deeper understanding for what our objectives and strategies are for the next couple of years. So then you got an East Star. Let's zip over to the West Star. West Star is really looking at our internal processes, the practices that we need to be upholding every single day. I am one of those leaders that, values is everything. Values is it's the guardrail on the highway that makes sure we stay between the lines and live up to who we say we are and who we say we want to be. Even though we're not going to get it right every day, we're going to come in the next day. And we did a really great exercise with our staff talking about our values. And then you put in the middle of all of that, our culture. That culture is, the old saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast, but it also can eat your business objectives for lunch and your mindset for dinner if you're not careful. And this is our revised mission statement, updated mission statement. Previously, it talked about we're here to match generosity with need, which is true, but I think it goes deeper than that. And the why is to build a more thriving and inclusive community. Is our end goal here. Today and for generations to come, community foundations are really set up to operate in perpetuity. And we have funds that have been created over the last 30 years that will continue to give and give and give long after I am gone. And that's what you want in a community foundation. And then to me, I think the most important word here is thoughtful. I want to transform thoughtful generosity into positive change. The majority of donors don't know what they don't know what they don't know. And it's our job to help them understand what's happening in the community, to know those new and emerging leaders who have great ideas, those nonprofits that are doing beautiful work, but they just can't break through the noise, to better understand if you really want to address homelessness, this is where we need to be investing. If you really want to understand college matriculation, this is what we need to be doing. We've got to start talking about that more than we have been, and I cannot wait to get into that. The values that I talked about, this all came from staff meetings, from multiple staff meetings. That a lot of it, if you've ever done appreciative inquiry work, where it's sitting around and you're talking about who are we when we're at our best, what's in the room, what's taking place, what do we want to be known for, and these are the values, but also the guiding principles and the practices underneath. And we'll be sharing this PDF out, so don't feel like you got a screenshot or all of it. But to me, today, if you look over at Ground the Work and Trust, what that looks like, bullet point number 1 is you share information widely, intentionally, and openly. That's the point of these calls and these Zoom sessions, because I want to be transparent. I want to communicate with bold honesty with you guys so that that this is worth us applying to, or now that I've heard really what the donor intent was on these funding pockets, maybe it's not right for me, but we want to be truly honest with that. And then, I love this slide and could talk about it for the next hour, but I better move on or I'll get stuck there. And then to me, this is something that is pinned up over my desk, and I think about it constantly. This North Star is not a vision statement for the city of Nashville or our surrounding counties. This North Star is who we want to be known as and what we want to be known for in the next few years, so that if somebody asks you guys about the community foundation in a couple of years from now, you're using words like trusted, valued, connector, solution seeker, and servant leader. When we're hiring new staff, these are the traits we're looking for. So this is our internal North Star. And then the last thing before I'll stop talking is the strategic plan and framework that we're building really is built around 4 shared outcomes. most of us, and I know I was in that camp for many, many years, when you think of a foundation, you think of one word, financial grants. And that's certainly an important part, but financial capital, honestly, for a healthy community foundation is just one of the forms of capital that we're investing. I think investing in intellectual capital and how we create new learning opportunities and partner with others to build knowledge, both within cohorts like child and youth development, but also citywide. And I've had some great conversations both with Center for Nonprofit Management and Tennessee Nonprofit Network about what we can do together there. How we build social capital by catalyzing networks and common agendas, some really amazing things happening since we were able to move into this building, and more than 11,000 folks have come through and used one of our conference rooms, and we love it. And I hope if you haven't had a meeting or strategic planning here or a board meeting or whatever, this is here for you at no cost. This is not our building, it's the community's building. And then the last is the reputational capital and how we can leverage our brand and our access to donors and just our experience to support organizations whose formal credentials, to be quite honest, don't always add up to the weight and the value that they have to bring to the table. It's a lot of young nonprofits. I love the work that we're doing with the Village, supporting Black and Brown leaders who are coming from the communities and they understand the problem because they live the problem and they know it a lot better than I do, and how we can leverage our reputational capital to celebrate and to grow their work. So that's a little bit about our journey, and I'm going to stick around and I'll answer questions in a minute. But the main person you need to hear from right now is Adnan Karim, our new Vice President of Community Impact, and we're all so excited to have him here. And I think you're going to learn why in just a moment. So I'm going to toss it over to you, Adnan.
Thank you, Hal. It is really a humbling opportunity for me to be in front of all of you, mainly for two reasons. One, I'm a product of MNPS. I graduated from Hume Fogg, went to Head, Meigs, Harpers Valley. So my whole life has been MNPS, a product of this space. And I'm just happy to be back home. I've spent my entire career predominantly in the education space, youth development. And so those for two reasons is really why I'm really excited for this group in particular today. Just a little bit on my background real quick before I jump into everything. As I said, I'm a native Nashvilleian, but I really started my career in education. I'm an AmeriCorps alum. I worked with schools all across the nation, grounded in social emotional learning, early literacy, math, after-school programs, civic engagement, human rights education, you name it. I was fortunate enough to lead a lot of programs all over the US and internationally, grounded in both human rights education, service learning, SEL, you name it. And I was fortunate enough to also lead a lot of community organizing work, and I did work in peace and conflict in parts of Africa, and what all the work drew back to the power of education and young people, and all the work that I've done. And I've done program design, fundraising, and all of this is within the nonprofit space. So I come from the nonprofit space for about 15 years. I'm only 2 months into the foundation and philanthropy space, but my heart and mind has always been in the nonprofit sector, particularly in the world of education. So I'm really happy to be here and chat about what we're doing. And I really wanted to pivot into this space because I see the power of not only funding, but strategic funding and what that looks like, and coupled with the intimate experience that I have in the nonprofit space. So I'm looking forward to connecting with folks one-on-one, and just, starting this journey back home with all of you. So getting into our community grants program, our goal is simple. We really want to champion those programs that are promoting a sense of belonging, allowing people to really feel connected and that they really feel included in a genuine and authentic way. And those are the organizations that we want to support. And as I get into the changes that we're making in our grant making, this is really looking at internally of who we want to be as grant makers. So this comes in a combination of primarily looking at feedback from the nonprofit sector here in Middle Tennessee, and really taking that feedback, looking in at best practices across the nation and around the world of what is, you know, strategic and deliberate grant makers doing in this space. And really reflecting on our own collective experiences. A lot of us within the community foundation that have worked in the nonprofit space that's worked in education, and really leaning in on that, and and most importantly, how can we be better servants to our community? And so, well, I want to go over some of our biggest changes, and I know some of you were in our general info session, and so you'll hear it again, but I think the first one is really important because this is a big shift, and it's really grounded in trust and a move from restricted programming grants to unrestricted general operating. This one's important because I think restricting the funds to your work really undermines your expertise, your proximity to the problem and the need, and really allowing you all to decide what's best for your organization and your ability to achieve your mission. And so that was a big decision on our end to really move to that trust, and really go to that unrestricted operating cost, and really leaning on you. How is this funding best utilized to achieve your mission? The next two are really around this dilemma. If you read Hal's memo when we announced the community impact grants, is the dilemma that I would venture to say a vast majority, if not all of you, particularly in the education space, wrestle with a lot of: do we go wide or do we go deep? And where do we go wide? Where do we go deep? And with limited funds, like, how do you make that decision to be strategic? And so we're wrestling with that same dilemma. And so, as Hal mentioned, historically, we've given average grant sizes of anywhere between $4,000 to $6,000 to a bunch of nonprofits, and we want to pivot that based on feedback of larger grants. We need more larger grants that are more transformative, and so we're shifting to a place where our average grant size is going to rest around that $20,000 mark. And coupled with, we were supporting almost 450 nonprofits, and making a shift to go deeper in our investment to about 150 grants and nonprofits. And we can chat about, and I'll touch a little bit about that more when we go to our questions of, you know, the why behind that. But the last one is this idea that we want to preference small to mid-size nonprofits where that average grant size is more transformative and can do more towards achieving your mission. And so those are some of the high-level ones. And you know, we took stock in where our funds, you know, why these impact areas. To Hal's point about transparency, I think folks see the foundation. You might see numbers like the foundation has given out 70 million in grants, but the reality is, out of that 70 million or so, there's really only a small portion of that that's really discretionary, that's in this pool of grants that folks have been used to receiving. And within that, they're really designated in particular fields of interest, and they've historically been in the arts, in child youth development and education, and in health, particularly mental health. And so looking at where have funds mostly gone, where have those field of interest funds been designated to, and where can we provide the most level of impact and partnerships with the grantee partners that we've got. And so we've really been able to narrow our focus, and where can we go deeper in versus, as Al said, can we really be everything from arts to zoology, or where can we really be responsible and strategic and really invest in deep partnerships? And so we want to talk about our investment in child youth development and education. I won't read it off word by word, but we really want to support those organizations that are really looking at the whole school, whole child, whole community. I think many of you have sort of heard of those models, and you know, what's building resilience and success for students both in and out of school. So primary focus on, you know, best practices and innovative approaches that are really integrating academic outcomes with social emotional learning outcomes, creating, you know, a lot of you know how instrumental and needed out of school, after school programmings are for better outcomes for young people. And how do we really strengthen partnerships amongst the school, with the community, with families and other organizations? And so those are the areas that we're primarily focused on, and funding priorities are going to be moving forward. We can go to the next slide. The other big change is, because it's general operating unrestricted funding, there's no need to request an amount. We'll be awarding amounts based on general operating size for each nonprofit organization, so that if you are receiving an award and you fall within the 1.5 to 3 million, you can expect to get 25,000 in grants. And so no need to put a request for that amount. And again, that's completely unrestricted operating costs, and it's at your discretion of what you need to use that funding for, and what better achieves your mission. And again, a brief overview of the timeline. Our applications are open now. They'll close on the 30th. They'll go under review for about 2 months, and then we'll announce awards in about the beginning of the third quarter, last quarter of the year. And just another plug that there are other grant opportunities that'll come out. They're not open right now, but they'll open up on August 1st. And a big question was, can I apply for these in addition to one of the areas? Absolutely. So you are more than welcome. If these are eligible for your organizations, you can apply for these in addition to one of the focus areas wherever your organization is eligible for. So wanted to, when you were able to register for the session, we gave an opportunity to ask questions or provide feedback. And so we summed them up to what are the most common questions in an effort to just streamline a lot of this transparency and questions that a lot of you had. So the most common thing wasn't even a question. There was just a lot of general curiosity, a mix of, I just want to learn more, or I'm new to grant writing and I just want to learn more in my ability to write the grant on behalf of the organization. So a lot of it was just general curiosity. I think I answered that question of how the funds can be used. Up to you. It's completely unrestricted. In terms of reporting, if you're receiving an award, we're just going to move to one final report. And we want to move to a space where it's as less burdensome as possible on the nonprofit. And so whether it's a form of a meeting, a simplified approach to the final report, but we'll announce more of what that report's going to look like, but it's just going to be one. We're not going to ask for quarterly reports that are asking for a bunch of information when you have a lot of other stuff going on. And so we're just going to be asking for one. How are applications scored and selected? This is a big one. So I want to share that we're in the process of finalizing a rubric, and we want to share that rubric so you know what we're looking at, and it's tied to the application questions. But I want to say that it's not just about a score. I don't think it's even strategic or responsible to provide awards just based off of a raw score. So one thing I'll share is, we're looking for compelling applications that are really identifying a strong methodology. Is it grounded in evidence? Does it have potential for outcome, or is it making outcomes and impact? So it's about that, but it's also about, when I talk about being strategic grant makers, are we just funding one-off organizations, but are we funding an ecosystem? And I think you all can appreciate that if you're working in the world of education, what's the ecosystem in which we live in that's really going to move the needle to create better outcomes for our young people and our system of education. So what we're looking at is, are we just funding only 100% direct service organizations? And is that it? Or are we being responsible and looking at, okay, we need to fund direct service organizations, but we also need to fund and support those organizations that are pushing forth on advocacy and policy change, what you would coin as working in the inside. Are we funding organizations that are organizing, structure organizing? What about those organizations that are really introducing alternatives that are outside of the status quo? And really looking at the whole ecosystem and making sure that, within the cohort of folks that we're funding in education, do they represent that entire ecosystem that's really looking at systems change in balance with place-based? And so being really thoughtful about how we're being funders in that regard, and connecting all of you that are in those different buckets of change, and looking at that ecosystem. And so I hope that sheds a little bit more light and we're going through selection committees in that. If you're unsure which area to select, I think all of you are here for education, but there was a question of I'm straddling the line between health and education. You know, our response would be apply under the focus area where you go the deepest, where you make your largest investments, where most of your outcomes and impact is being made, and apply under that category, and select that. I think I answered that question of how these focus areas were selected. You know, if we can grow more funding in this and in our, particularly in our completely unrestricted areas, there's an opportunity. And if there's funders willing to fund in other focus areas, then absolutely we'll expand into other focus areas. But for now, this is where our funding is and where our priorities are. And can I apply to other funding opportunities? Yes.
Thanks, Adnan. I think at this point, what I would love to do is, answer more questions that may have popped up. Nicole, I don't know if you've got any for us. If you're
I do. There are several actually.
today, so let them rip.
All right. There's one that came through direct message that said, will the rubric be available in advance of the grant deadline?
I think so, yes. It's in the process, but we will have it before the 30th. But again, it's going to be tracking in terms of the rubric itself. It's not going to veer away from anything that we're asking. We're not going to be scoring you on anything that's not asked on the application.
And okay, then we have an anonymous participant that asked, is the Community Foundation dividing the 150 deeper investments equally within the 3 categories? So would there be 50 investments in each of the categories?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The largest investment, and this is all based upon donors who have left and set up funds for these 3 impact areas. The largest pool of funding actually is in this one. So we'll have more grants in child, youth, and development and education than any of the other 2. So this is our biggest pool of funding.
All right, then I have, thanks for the information. I work with an adult literacy program in Nashville. 76% of people we serve are female, and about half of them are school-age children. There is compelling research and evidence that the literacy level of the parent, especially the mother, is the #1 indicator of a child's academic success. While we don't directly serve children, we do impact children. Would we qualify for this grant in this category?
The way these funds have been set up now, you would not. I mean, this is really directly looking at services for children and youth in and out of school time. What I would say is that you may want to consider the Women's Fund. Might be a better opportunity for you, and that'll be opening up in August.
Do we fund startup organizations? That's it.
Yeah, we do fund startup organizations. We have a funding category called Jumpstart grants that are specifically for brand new organizations. This year, we're not going to be bringing on any new Jumpstart grantees. We're going to be carrying over the ones who received grants from last year so that we can give them 2 years of funding. But there will be that will be opening up in 2025.
All right, then we have, what is the maximum awarded amount for organizations with budgets larger than $5 million?
They cap out at 30,000.
Yeah.
If an organization has several programs related to youth empowerment, can the grant fund multiple programs?
It's one fund for the organization.
Yeah, we're not funding programs, we're funding organizations. So
yeah. Hold on, I got some that came to me through the chat too. So hold on, I got to get there. Okay, we're good. How long does an organization have to be in existence to apply?
Oh, I'm sorry, Adnan, I wasn't sure if you were going to jump into that one or not.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, but a minimum of 3 years, because
Yes.
anything under that is the Jumpstart eligibility.
Correct. That's what I know to be true. Is education limited to 18 and under, or will college initiatives be allowed?
It's 18, it's children and youth, so it's really 18 and under, yeah.
And please don't mind that I'm checking these as I go through them so I don't miss one, y'all. If you see me check, put the check emoji on there. And I think this might be the last. Oh no, there's one more in the other Q&As. What is the target age group of the target population? I think that's we just.
Yeah, it's that, and want to be clear. Yeah. That's true.
All right.
I did want to talk one thing though, I want to put it out there is because we have gotten questions about early childhood. These grants are not for early childhood programs. That is, we're making Community Foundation is making a significant investment this year in the new Nashville Early Education Coalition, which you're going to be hearing a lot about. It's Melanie Schinbaum has come on board to help jumpstart that. So we won't be funding in this round early childhood programs, but watch this space because we, under Melanie's leadership and through NEAT, will be looking to fund early childhood programs in the future, specifically.
Thank you, Hal. I have two more questions that just popped into the Q&A. One is, our nonprofit provides direct financial and emotional services to parents and children who are undergoing a pediatric illness. Does this fit here, or is mental health a better fit?
That's what I don't want to answer that. That's probably worth another conversation offline with either Adnan or Nicole, and they're happy to help you figure that out because that's a good question, and we want to make sure that we direct you to the best where you'll have the most success, most likelihood of success.
I think it is worth noting too that if you did happen to apply under mental health, and then there are real people reading your application. So if we believe that you would be more competitive and fit better in another category, we'll have a discussion and make sure that the application gets marked as such. So
yeah, thanks, Nicole.
I have a question. Can you describe, I think this would be a good Adnan question, I'm guessing. Can you describe the difference between direct services and public awareness and education in the service strategies on the application? So I think this is where there was some vocab information about the type. So they're wanting to know direct services and public awareness and education. Direct services mentions immediate needs. So would that be more focused on food, shelter, etc.?
What I mean by direct service is more like, think of like I'll use my own experience as an example, like AmeriCorps members working directly with students one-on-one when there's students who are off track in ELA or math, and you're working on one-on-one to get them back on reading levels, and or you're running after school program with a set of students attendance and providing that direct service, as opposed to public. Put it more under the umbrella of advocacy, where where organization is pushing forth for advocacy of trying to think of a good example here. Like more integration of social emotional learning practices within an after school programming, or within, you're an organization trying to develop more of that integration of, social emotional learning entity, and you're trying to advocate for that more on like a policy level and a legislative level, and you're pushing forth for that policy. That's kind of what I mean by the ecosystem of direct service versus advocacy versus, and then I bring up alternatives. Are you an organization, focused on, inefficient practices like out of school suspension, and you're introducing more restorative practices into the school space? And that's kind of an example of an alternative. Is it Cami that asked that? I hope that clarifies a little bit of that question. Or I forget who asked that.
It was anonymous. It was anonymous.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't tell you. We do have a few more that submitted. You guys are asking such great questions. Thank you so much. Where is the best way to receive updates about funding opportunities with the Community Foundation. I'm actually going to put, I know the answer to this, so I'm going to put it in the chat. We use the Giving Matters newsletter email sign up just for the mailing list itself. So if you're in this meeting, you probably are already in that mailing list, but I put the link to sign up for that in the chat if you need it. Does our Giving Matters profile affect our scores? Want me to answer that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nicole, I think you can answer that one.
Okay. Since I'm the Giving Matters manager, I'll give you that information. What usually happens after the grant application is submitted is our grants team will reach out to me and ask me to pull a report of specific areas on your Giving Matters profile. Those are your budget, your current fiscal year budget, your current 990, and your current audit, and then if you are up to date on your charitable solicitations permit. And sometimes they'll also ask me for program information. I imagine that will be less likely this time because we're just doing more general operating support. So if you're unsure if your profile is up to date, as long as you currently have a profile, we give until the same day as the application is due to get those up to date. But you're always welcome to reach out to me or Haley, and we would be happy to tell you what we
And
need.
just one thing, I know you guys know this, but I want to remind you, Giving Matters is used by multiple foundations.
Yeah.
So although it may feel a little like, okay, this is such a pain, multiple foundation partners are looking at it and using it. And so I promise you, it's the juice is worth the squeeze.
Yeah, we have approximately 10 foundation partners that we partner with that pull reporting, and then I am constantly hearing of others who are utilizing it to inform their grant making. So it really does decrease the amount of questions you're getting on each application because they're not asking you them, they're just asking me to pull a report for them. So
I had a question come in saying, and maybe this is helpful for some folks, asking, can you give an example of what you mean by going deep versus wide in the context of education? I'll lean on my own experience as an example. When I was working at a place called RFK Human Rights, I was leading our human rights education work, and we were doing a lot of educator training on human rights education and introducing the pedagogy and framework of how to implement that in schools. And so what we were measuring as success at that time was the number of teachers that were going through our training program, and then how many schools did that represent. And so we would talk about, this year we trained 15,000 teachers. But I think the dilemma was we were only a staff of 3 doing that. And beyond the training, it was very difficult to measure, well, what was the impact out of attending our training? Are you, how frequently, how often are you using the curriculum or lesson plans? Were you developing lesson plans on your own in terms of sustainability? Were the outcomes that we wanted intended out of human rights education actually being demonstrated in students? That's very difficult to do if you're, staff of 3 trying to reach 15,000 people, and, the depth of impact becomes very difficult, because how do you maintain that relationship and sustainable relationships with 15,000 teachers spread across the world? And so we made a decision to say, instead of using that as our benchmark of success, we said, we're going to go to a 10-school model. So instead of just one-off teachers from one school that may not even get the full support from their school to even do the work, how sustainable is it? We're going to focus on just 10 schools and really go deep and figure out how do we create an like a culture of human rights education, because it's more than just a teacher. It's what's the culture of the school? Is it backed by leadership? Is there community support? Is there sustained support from us as an organization to ensure that that's actually being practiced? And, a lot of if you're familiar with like Castle's framework in terms of SEL, it's not just school instruction, but it's a lot more than just what's in the classroom. And so we made a decision to go fewer educators, fewer schools, but a lot more deeper in the way that we engage in that partnership to really prove that our methodology is yielding outcomes and that we had those kinds of relationships. So I hope that answers the question of like, what we kind of mean by what's wide versus deep and the rationale behind that. So it's not, we're not prioritizing people just because you're meeting more students, but it's really the quality of how you're meeting the needs that we're prioritizing in our funding model.
Got just a few more questions. Thank you, Adnan. I think that was helpful for me too. Somebody wanted to know, can these funds be used to expand childcare spots at an existing center? And I bet that fits better in the Childcare Tennessee group.
Yeah, that would, yes, if you're looking to expand and serve more children, I hope you'll apply for our Childcare Tennessee grants because we have quite a bit of funding from DHS specifically to expand childcare. So that's another conversation, and Nicole or Adnan can connect you with that team if you don't know them, but there are resources there, but they do not apply for that through this funding opportunity because that wouldn't be a good use of your time.
Yeah, we'll go through that, and there's literally it's called an expansion grant, so you can go through Childcare Tennessee to get that, to apply for that.
Just to clarify, child development centers, which would be 6 weeks to 5 years, do not apply. But what if they have summer camps for school age kids?
Yeah, that would count. Yeah, that qualifies. It's school age supports.
And then, oh, hold on. I got some more in my regular chat. Hold on. They're all over. All right. It sounds like you're willing to schedule one-on-one meetings with applicants to discuss our proposal ideas or give feedback. If so, can we email Nicole and Adnan to schedule a meeting? I'm seeking guidance on which program is the best fit for us. I would say that we're doing general operating grants, so you don't have to worry about which program fits. It's as long as you're hitting the child care development.
Yeah, I mean, tell your story and the impact that you're making in the space. We're looking to fund organizations and not specific programs. If you're doing multiple things, talk about where you're going deepest and where you're having, just where you feel like the greatest impact. That's what we're looking for. And again, like Nicole said, if we get one and it comes in for child and youth, but we're like, hey, this is really a better fit in this category, we'll let you know, and we will make that move. We won't just toss it in the.
But also, if you would like to chat with me about your Giving Matters profile, I'm sure you can also, we have a grants person that would love to talk to you about your application too. So reach out to us via email if you have some follow-up questions. We're here as well. Let's see, I had another one. Do you have grants for mentorship and career readiness for ages 18 through 25?
We don't have dedicated grants for that at this time.
Another question from an anonymous participant is, how much are the Jumpstart grants?
5,000.
Yeah, they've historically been $5,000. I'm hoping we'll be able to raise that to higher numbers next year, but that's what they were in the past.
Oh, I could answer this question, but maybe other people have it, so I'll say it, I'll say it out loud. For the 3 goals of this category, do we have to meet all 3 as an organization or just one?
Yeah, just give it. Yeah.
No. Those are 3 separate funding. I mean, if you meet more than one, that's okay too.
Yeah, great, but yeah.
I think that might be all of them. Give me 1 second just to make sure I don't see anything in my chat. Yep. We've gone through all the questions, gentlemen.
Well, all right. Well, listen, we don't want to take up any more of your time. Thank you so much for being curious, for wanting to learn. I hope that, this has answered a lot of questions and given some clarity that maybe wasn't there before. And just talk about, that North Star of wanting to be the most trusted and valued connector and servant leader, I mean it. So the 3 of us, plus Laundry and others, we're here to support you. So don't hesitate to reach out, okay? And Adnan, anything else you want to say?
No, just a pleasure to see everyone, and hopefully there's a moment for me to get out there and meet all of you. I've been sort of inundated with emails, so I'm doing my best to get back to any of you that have emailed me, and so I promise to get back to folks as soon as I can. But it's my commitment to really try to make the point of the last thing I'll say is the whole point of all of this is for us as grant makers to be partners. We don't want this to be a transactional relationship. It's about really being in partnership in a meaningful way where having been on the other side is like, what we don't want is us coming in and you feeling like we're like an auditor or an evaluator, but that if you're having issues and you want to troubleshoot through something, you want to talk strategy, that the reason why we're going deeper with fewer organizations with larger investments so that we can engage in that authentic way where it's a true partnership and not, I always talked about like, how do we relieve these power dynamics that don't need to exist between funder and grantee? And again, I don't like the word grantee. It should be the expert. You're the expert. And how do we lean in on one another and really meet a shared community need? And so that's what I'm excited to do. And just humbled to be in front of all of you today and looking forward to it.
Bye. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good weekend.
It's so nice to see all of you. Bye.